My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds or geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and DC. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverse. Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Well, we're going. We don't need roads.
And welcome. Do we?
And welcome to the Bat Credit Card Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
Oh, I thought we looked at it through the Hubble telescope.
Well, there is an alternate universe somewhere where this show was called the Bat Credit Card Podcast because originally I wanted to call this the Bat Credit Card Podcast because I thought it'd be a fun callback to, the movie Batman and Robin, where Batman famously has a credit card that is branded as a Batman credit card that has a expiry date of forever.
I am aware of this movie and that particular scene.
But when I Googled it, there already existed a Bat Credit Card Podcast.
Really?
And I was disappointed. I was like, dang it, I thought I had such a good idea. And that's how we end up settling on the Bat Jar Podcast, because there wasn't a Bat Jar Podcast anywhere.
Really? I would have thought that one, like Big Bang Theory has been kind of bigger and kind of more, popular than Batman and Robin. So I was kind of thinking maybe there would be something like that. But hey, I'm glad there wasn't. But
nonetheless, I guess today I'll be Above Average Joe. And what would your alternate universe name be?
I think we settled on beef pork cookies.
Beef pork cookies.
Especially if we're the Bat Credit Card, we got to have cookies somewhere in here. Otherwise, why am I doing this podcast?
Right. So if you can't understand why we're doing this, we're presenting it as if we're living in an alternate reality, because we're going to be talking about the Marvel series that's airing on Disney Plus. What if? And it's true. At one point, this show was meant to be called the Bat Credit Card Podcast, and I'm sure there is an alternate world somewhere. If that's true, that there's alternate worlds, there's probably one where this podcast is called the Bat Credit Card Podcast. But no, you are indeed listening to the Bat Jar Podcast. We do put nerd and geek culture under the microscope, but I'm going to keep the alternate intro for today, if that's okay with you, Beeper.
Oh, I like it.
So yes.
You know what's funny though? Beeper still works for beef pork cookie. Because Beeper is beef pork.
No, I actually how I imagine them as beef pork are ribs.
Oh, I see. Okay, then no, you're right. It doesn't work.
It'd be like I can't even think anymore. It's I just had a Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm worried that the turkey's gonna slowly
beep. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Beeper sounds better. Much as I dislike that nickname, it does work better than Beak.
My brain's gonna slowly rot because I'm gonna fall asleep because of there's some chemical that's in turkey that makes you fall asleep. I can't remember what it's called. But Jam Jam is here, and in an alternate universe, she would be Bam Bam, maybe.
No, we would never have named our kid after a Flintstone character.
What do you got against the Flintstones?
Nothing. I mean, if she was born a boy, maybe, but also, I don't know. I don't like Bam Bam as a character, generally speaking. I don't know. He's just kind of a one-note character, except in that one movie where he gets married and then he's kind of an idiot.
Well, I don't know if that's the one Christmas special you're thinking of, where it's in the future and Pebbles and Bam Bam are adults and they have their own kids.
No, it was this movie. I don't know why we had it, but we had it, and Pebbles and Bam Bam were getting married in it.
I've commented on this a lot. I can't understand how there were so many. There's at least 4 different Christmas Flintstones things, and I'm like, the whole point of Flintstones. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the theory that the Flintstones is actually a post-apocalyptic world, and that's why they have like versions of TV and all these things that.
Interesting. I had not heard that, but it makes I can understand the basic concept.
Have you also heard the theory that it exists in the same world as the Jetsons, and the Jetsons are just?
I mean, I would assume if the theory exists that it's in a post-apocalyptic future. So the Jetsons are just in orbit, and if they were to go down to Earth, they would find the Flintstones.
Yeah. Except there was a movie where they crossed over and it involved time travel, so that kind of debunks that theory. But the theory that the Flintstones is still some post-apocalyptic world could hold up. But if we're meant to, because the song says they're the modern Stone Age family, if it is meant to be prehistoric, how could you possibly have Christmas? That would suggest Jesus would need to have been born, right?
I mean, yes, but at the same time, the Flintstone is full of like pop culture references, which we kind of play off as being like in universe, but they really aren't. So like it makes sense that you could have, Christmas is just sadly considered a pop culture thing, and so it's like, oh yeah, it's okay, it's just a different version.
Okay, maybe we should start a different podcast where we talk about the Flintstones universe.
Maybe later.
So I mean, I've actually read some of the comic books that are What If, like in every issue, it is very much an anthology series because every issue kind of addresses a specific variation of something that happens in the Marvel universe. So when they announced that they were going to be doing a What If series for Disney Plus, I thought it was a great idea. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. But I'm curious, have you ever read any of the What If comics, and were you excited about the announcement?
No, is this our SOS? Because I had no idea what I knew that Marvel, in a different way than DC, but in a similar fashion, had alternate realities, and a lot of those things had been kind of explored. And I knew this before we got into, people started announcing the new Spider-Man movie, or before Into the Spider-Verse came out, but I never really looked into them specifically. So I think, I was just kind of, I had a general idea that, what it's going to be based around. I knew who the Watcher was, so it made sense for him to be there and things like that. But like, I didn't have any context for what the series was originally.
Okay. Well, What If as a comic book series, it probably wouldn't have been one that I would like pick up every single month, because it really depended on what it was about, if I was interested in it or not. Because like if it was about Spider-Man, like I remember one issue, it's like, what if Spider-Man had 6 arms? And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to read that.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
But then there was one where like, what if the Fantastic Four never got their powers? And I'm like, I don't know if I care at all about
I mean, given the importance of Reed Richards in the comics, that is a pretty big one.
But again, wouldn't, if you think about paying with your dollars, the idea of a series that's an anthology and it focuses on like the entire Marvel universe, it didn't capture my interest enough to buy every single issue. I only bought the ones that seemed of interest to me.
Yeah, right. That still makes sense. I'm just saying that, like, I was just justifying. I was just protecting. Wow. I was just saying. I do understand that one being like something that other people would find pretty interesting, and that would actually affect the Marvel universe as a whole pretty dramatically.
Yeah, but unlike this series, which I think will actually have ramifications for things down the road, most of the issues that happen in the What If comics were very one-shot-ish. Like we tell the story once and we're never going to visit this again.
Right. Yeah, it's an alternate universe that will never affect ours.
Yeah, I think there might be a handful of known characters who first emerged in a What If scenario, but for the most part, it's these fun little anthology. And it's a great place for writers to be creative, right? Because they don't have to worry about complying with whatever the status quo is for each character. They can really just tell whatever story they want because it doesn't matter, in a manner of speaking,
Yeah, and that's that's a fun exercise. And I do remember talking to Mjolnir. Zombies was one of the what ifs, I believe.
Marvel Zombies originated actually in an issue of Ultimate Fantastic Four. People, that's a little known factoid there.
Oh. Well, there you go.
They like trick Ultimate Reed Richards. We think it's Reed Richards from the normal Marvel universe shows up in the Ultimate universe, and he asks Ultimate Reed Richards to help build a portal, which he thinks is going to connect him to the main Marvel continuity, which hadn't happened yet at this point. But then it turns out he's opening a door to a dimension where everyone's a zombie, and that's where Marvel Zombies comes from. But anywho, when they announced that they were going to be doing a What If series for Disney Plus, I thought this was a great idea because it would give them space to kind of play and do all this sort of fun anthology variations of stories. And it was announced that it was going to be animated. And I can understand why, because obviously cost.
Oh, yeah.
To
getting all of your A-listers into one series is quite the endeavor.
Yes. And then hearing that they were only going to do variations on stories that were in the first 3 phases of the MCU, I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're only it's not quite as unlimited a pool of potential stories as we would like. It's kind of limited to everything that we would have seen in the first 3 movies, or first 3 phases of movies, I should say.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I was kind of expecting that because Marvel is working very hard at doing that. Keeping the MCU one big coherent thing. It's understandable why they made that decision.
And I get it. Like, if you're someone who only knows the MCU because of the movies, this idea of presenting variations of what would happen based on the movies is probably the best frame of reference I guess you could have.
Yeah, and I mean, furthermore, like, for better or for worse, it's Disney that's heading this, and they are trying to get more people to get their streaming service, which is, based around popularity. They want to do things like, I feel like there's going to be a lot more things that have a broad appeal before they start. I mean, they've started doing a few like obscure things. Like, what's the name of the stop motion Marvel?
Are you talking about MODOK?
Yeah, MODOK. Like, they are starting to get some things, but when it's a big project that involves, a lot of big names, they're going to stick to what they know works.
MODOK was actually original for Hulu, but for us it shows up on Disney Plus because originals for Hulu turn on to Canadian Disney Plus as Stars content.
Ah, okay.
Or Star, I should say. Just like how we get that Only Murders in the Building show on our Disney Plus that's actually a Hulu show, but because we don't have Hulu here, we get that stuff on Disney Plus.
I thought that was a movie. Interesting.
Oh yeah, I've seen the first episode. It is very odd to see Steve Martin and Martin Short with Selena Gomez, but once you get over that, it's quite interesting. Anyway, so What If? When I heard it was going to be animated, I was interested because I like animation, and when I saw the first pieces of the animation, I'm like, I don't know how to feel about this. It's like a 3D CG, almost like a kind of cell shading style, and they're trying to replicate the likenesses of the actors
to varying degrees.
Yeah, to varying degrees. Some of them are like Chadwick Boseman. That looks just like Chadwick Boseman, but I'm like, that does not look like Paul Rudd to me.
Oh yeah, that was. It was also just his head, which I don't know. Might have made it easier, might have made it harder. I'm not sure.
So in the end, I didn't like the animation. It was pretty good for like fights. The fighting animation was pretty fluid, but I found that the way the heads were animated for talking, the lip syncing, it just didn't feel like the mouths were ever moving at the same pace as the actors.
Right. Although to be fair, this series, like, without spoiling anything, I might have minorly spoiled something already, but like, is pretty action oriented. Even the ones that aren't. I mean, all the episodes, I'm trying to think back, most of them do have a fair amount of action in it and tend to be very action oriented. Maybe not as much as the last like 3, but there still is that overarching, not theme, but like aspect of the show.
So in other words, because it is more focused on the action looks good. it didn't bother you as much that the mouth moving wasn't as in sync
Yeah,
as I would have liked.
exactly. And but also more to the point, I think, animation is expensive, and you always, not always, but usually have to take some kind of shortcut. So if the net was a positive in the action department, which the show was more axed around, I think that just works better than having maybe put more effort into lip syncing and character models and end up with sloppier action.
Well, this first season has 9 episodes, and it's really hard to talk about it as like a whole series because outside of the final 2 episodes, it's an anthology series. Every episode is kind of its own thing because each episode is presenting us with a different alternate take on
Something.
the MCU. Like it's either a variation of a specific movie or a specific event that happens in a single movie plays out differently, and therefore a whole new set of circumstances happen as a result of that.
Somewhat. I mean, I feel like there's a few that are very much just, I think the earlier ones especially are just like, oh, this is the same movie, but slightly different.
Yeah, someone made a point on the internet saying that they kind of felt like they had to do that to try to ease people who aren't familiar with all this multiverse stuff into this idea of the multiverse. Like start with a simple change and then kind of make them more. And that's actually like, I know some people who like stopped watching after the first episode because they're like, this is just a speed run version of the first Captain America movie.
Yeah, which was I understand that one as a starting one, but then like, what if T'Challa was Star-Lord also kind of had...
It wasn't really a repeat of Guardians of the Galaxy though.
That's true. But it felt a little bit quick, which again,
it's hard to talk about this as a whole series because some of the episodes are very dark and serious. Some of them are very jokey and funny, and they do feel very disconnected from one another, which, to be fair, I think the What If comic book series is a lot like that too. Like some of the what if scenarios are quite silly. Some of them are quite serious. So it's a thing. It's kind of hard for me to like give an impression of the entire show.
Which I think would do it a disservice if you tried to go overall. So maybe we should try to divide it up a little bit if we're going to talk about it.
Yes, I thought it might be helpful just to go through each episode and just say what we liked or didn't like about it. And then after that, we'll talk about who are favorite characters that were introduced in this.
Time. Space. Reality. It's more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibility, where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. I am the Watcher. I am your guide through these vast new realities. Follow me and ponder the question, what if?
So needless to say, we'll be getting through spoilers pretty quickly here, but I will say I wasn't expecting there to be so much kind of build up to what if. Like I didn't know that the Loki show is really going to be kind of pinch hitting the setup for this series as much as it did.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, completely unaffected by it.
Meaning, like, if you didn't watch Loki, you could still watch this, and
you would like, yeah. And like, I had a friend recently who pointed out, like, partially because of the success of Rick and Morty, people kind of know what and like alternate realities are a little bit better than they might have before, and there's kind of like this readiness for what if that wasn't there before.
I guess this is also what the early MCU was too, where you could only watch Avengers without having watched the previous movies and still not feel like you're missing something. So maybe it's a benefit to those of us who are watching everything that we can appreciate the connective tissue, but it's still accessible enough to people watching things for the first time.
Yeah. And again, it's not what I would have preferred if I were heading the series, but it does like we already mentioned a couple of times, a lot of the way this series was structured was for kind of broader appeal.
Right. Okay, so episode 1 is the what if Peggy Carter was Captain Carter? I don't know why they couldn't call her Captain Britain. I think just calling her Captain Carter was kind of dumb.
Especially because they did commit to putting the Union Jack on her shield and
her outfit.
Yeah, there was no reason for her not to be Captain Britain, but c'est la vie, as they say.
Okay, so what is one thing you did like about the Captain Carter episode?
Something I liked.
You can say nothing.
I like that they found a way to keep Steve Rogers in it.
Oh, okay. You liked him as like a 40s Iron Man, basically?
I mean, yeah. Well, I didn't like that the 40s Iron Man looked exactly... Well, I didn't dislike it because it looked exactly like the first Iron Man suit in Iron Man, but at the same time, that's because that looks almost exactly like the original Iron Man design. So I understand but again, because you're going from the point of view that this is a remake of the MCU, it just seems strange that Tony's dad designed exactly the same robot that he ended up without there being like a precedent for what this robot is.
Right. I think one thing I like.
So yeah, the Hydra Stomper was interesting. I didn't really like it, but I like that it allowed Steve Rogers to stay involved in the story.
Right. And my boy Josh Keaton was the voice of Steve Rogers in What If. There's a lot of apparently they contacted all the actors to ask them to reprise their roles, and so there are a lot of the MCU actors that are not in this. There are a lot that are, but the ones that aren't, it's noticeable. But I thought Josh Keaton, who I know from being like the young Hercules, the star of the Green Lantern animated series, the Spectacular Spider-Man, the new Voltron show, I thought he was a great stand-in for Chris Evans in terms of playing Steve Rogers. I'll give him props. But what I did like about this episode was Captain Carter herself. I liked the way she fought. I thought she was it was a fun way to see Peggy Carter in a different perspective, to see her as the superhero of the story.
Yeah, I think also Mjolnir made me watch Agent Carter recently, so I had a little bit of that, but it is nice to see her kind of take more of that role on. Yeah.
So what didn't you like about Captain Carter's episode?
What I didn't like, it felt, well, I mean, okay, so we're gonna go with the obvious. It is basically just a rehashing of Captain America: The First Avenger. It's almost exactly the same events that happened. The what if really doesn't change that much about the general plot of it, and what it changes doesn't necessarily feel impactful.
I would agree.
Until and we're into spoilers pretty much.
Yeah, this is a whole.
So until it becomes relevant at the end in other episodes, or cameos more like in other episodes. But even there, it still wasn't anything extraordinary.
I would agree. All right, moving on. Episode 2 was the "What if T'Challa became Star-Lord" episode. So what is one thing you did like about this episode?
It was nice to have a tribute to Chadwick Boseman. It was a fun heist story. The basic story of it was fun, and I liked it. Yeah, that's the main thing. I think it was well done, and it was well thought out. Well thought out. It was a good story, and a good fun thing to put in.
I think that's something I like about What If as a whole, is that there is a surprising amount of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa, different versions of him. I think you see at least 3 different versions of T'Challa throughout the course of these 9 episodes. And, they obviously had no idea Chadwick Boseman was going to die when they were making this. So it is honestly a gift that we've gotten to have this much of him after his death. So I would probably agree. What I didn't like about it is, I know this. It's just kind of the story presents T'Challa would have solved everyone's problems if he had been the one to go to space. and it just seemed kind of forced. Like the fact that he was able to convince Thanos to not go through with his plan.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know
Like,
about that.
it seemed a little forced. It also was the first instance of Thanos getting overpowered by everybody in every episode, which was like kind of interesting and not great. Like, I understand why they did it, but at the same time, it was also, and there were small things like the Ravagers picking up the wrong kid completely, like, haha, they're race blind because an Earthling looks like an Earthling. But I'm sorry, the Ravagers are like predominantly humanoid. They would be able to tell the difference. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as they are portrayed in the MCU, even though yes, they're alien pirates from all kinds of different places, like no, they should be able to recognize distinctive features among themselves and realize that like there was a good excuse for it. It's like, well, you know, there's the big meteorite full of vibranium is there, so they were like, something from outer space, and picked up the kid that they found, but it still seemed a little bit odd to put in.
Yeah, with some of these ones where it's kind of a variation on an existing premise, they kind of again speed run through all the things we'd already know. Like, okay, like let's just get to the points that are different now.
Oh, but I do enjoy that it was the first one that kind of hinted at outside ramifications. I mean, I guess the Agent Carter or the Captain Carter kind of somewhat did a little bit because they paid lip service to the fact that the interdimensional monster might be something that would come back or be somewhere else, but there was no guarantee of that. But at the end of What If T'Challa had been picked up instead of had become Star-Lord, you do see Peter getting taken over by Ego, and Ego start growing on the planet.
Right. Okay, episode 3, I think is my favorite episode, the What If the Avengers Never Formed one. And
yeah, there's one thing I dislike about it, but there's a lot to like about it for sure.
I mean, what I like about it is that it felt like it was written by somebody who really knew the MCU. Like the fact that they knew that Thor, Iron Man 2, and Incredible Hulk kind of all happened at the same time. I really enjoyed that element, like kind of going back to the early MCU and seeing this, very variation on like what if they all got knocked off.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I will. I will say I did quite enjoy, and I mean I enjoyed. That was the first one where I realized the action sequences were very well done. Like there was good things happening in like the heist in the second episode, and like the choreography was good in Captain Carter, but this was the first one where I was like, oh wow, this works like really well, right? And I'd say, see, here's the thing: is I'd say what I liked about it is that it seems like the person wasn't just going off the MCU, because the episode does end with a everybody hates Hank Pym kind of premise, which isn't like, it's kind of present in the Ant-Man. Like most people don't like Hank Pym in the Ant-Man movies, but it's not like the same visceral hatred that people have of him in the comics, which wouldn't make sense in the MCU because the reason people hate him is because he created Ultron in the comics, and Ultron is a massive problem in the comics. So I thought it was weird to have this like, oh yeah, it's just let's hate on Hank Pym because he's a terrible person kind of storyline. I know it wasn't directly, like people didn't say that out loud, but you kind of had that idea, like that kind of, yeah, no, it's time to hate on Hank Pym for this episode. And it worked, and it made sense, and it still made sense within the universe that like Hank Pym was really, would be devastated and probably go, a little rabid if Hope were to die. But I don't know, it seemed a little bit not completely MCU, the fact that he was actually like immediately found out and people were like, that jerk.
The only thing I don't like about this episode is that Michael Douglas, I'm like, this sounds like a person trying to do a Michael Douglas impression. Like I actually didn't think it was him reprising the role until I saw the credits, and I was like, this is just an example of an on-screen actor who isn't a good voice actor.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it happens. Okay, this is really petty. I dislike the fact that I figured it out as it was happening who it was, because I got really annoyed because I'm like, crap, they just showed it. Because I wanted to show off and be like, I figured it out, but then I couldn't.
I was genuinely surprised when the reveal was made at the end. I was like, oh, that checks out.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. But I don't know. But that's not a critique of the episode itself. It's just me being a little bit too slow to get to it. No, I think it was a great episode. It played well into also, like you said, introducing the Hulk properly. It also, I remember when I was watching it with Mjolnir, she was really happy that it kind of acknowledged that the Incredible Hulk is part of the MCU, which a lot of people tend to forget because Edward Norton never came back, right? But it is very much part of the MCU and something that you should be kind of looking at when making your canon, which I think was really cool.
The fourth episode, what I'm calling it the Steins Gate episode.
Okay.
It's the one focused on Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And the reason I call it the Steins Gate episode, and the reason why I don't like it, is in the show, Doctor Strange goes to insane extremes to make sure his girlfriend doesn't die. And even from the Doctor Strange movie, I never got the sense that they were that much in love with each other. And it just it felt like I was watching the latter part of Steins Gate, where he just keeps trying to prevent her from dying, and it becomes one of those absolute things that cannot change. And it's like,
interesting.
I couldn't buy. I didn't think he was warranted in the lengths he was going to try and keep her alive.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things there. First, it was an alternate universe, and I think in that alternate universe, he cared more about her because they do actually address this, because they are still dating, right? Whereas in the Doctor Strange movie, they've recently broken up. So, like, there was something there. I agree it's kind of a lot, but at the same time, and this is something that Mjolnir has been pointing out a lot, and other people too, is that, Dr. Stephen Strange just breaks the rules all the time. Like, when people are talking about, like, how it might be Mephisto who did the spell that starts the multiverse in No Way Home, and I'm like, and Mjolnir was pointing out, like, no, it's probably just Stephen Strange being an idiot and thinking he's better than he is, because that is very much his character. And so, like, I feel like they could have taken a bit more time maybe to establish why this relationship is different than in the other movie. But as we've pointed out many times, not just on the podcast, this episode, but when we talk about this, privately, a lot of the choices they made for What If were kind of dictated by the fact that they had to contain these episodes in, within an episode, and they couldn't really just do anything they wanted. And I think that was in large part why, because I feel like with a bit more time establishing their relationship, it could have worked.
So a lot of people, like, I've looked at a couple of people's rankings. This is, for a lot of people, their favorite episode of What If, and I just couldn't get into it. Like, the one thing I'll say nice about it is, like, Benedict Cumberbatch does give a good vocal performance. Like, he seems
very much, actually. That was, although he's done voice work before.
Yes, he's that Smaug guy.
I was thinking of Penguins of Madagascar, but yes, also the Smaug. He's Smaug. But also, I think it was like, it was a better.
Did you like this episode?
I liked it, definitely, and I think it was one of the better character studies. Even though, as you said, it wasn't quite the same character, so it might have felt a little jarring. But because in the previous episode, you get Hank Pym, and you kind of look at how he personally is very affected by this alternate universe. And here you kind of had, Doctor Strange, and now he is very personally affected, which is something that wasn't kind of there in the first two episodes. Because even, again, partially because they made T'Challa kind of like Mr. Perfect, for better or for worse, it didn't feel like he was that affected by the changes or anybody else, like except Thanos. But as I said, Thanos just seems to not matter in this season of What If, at least. So it was kind of nice to see that for the Doctor Strange episode.
Okay, and is there anything you didn't like about this Doctor Strange episode?
I mean, I didn't like that this show came out after Loki, because that's the episode that made the least sense in a universe where the TVA exists.
Very good. Okay, the 5th episode was one of my favorites, the zombies episode. And I'll admit, partially why I like it is because it's the one that has Spider-Man in it. So it's already
yeah, that's true.
It's even though it's not Tom Holland, I'm like, whatever, you sound enough like him. And I'm kind of mad at them because they really made a point of marketing Spider-Man wearing the Doctor Strange cloak as if he was going to be like the lead of one of the episodes. And it's like a thing for maybe a few minutes in this episode. I think that's the thing I dislike about it is they really trolled me with the prospect like, ooh, it's the zombie hunter Spider-Man who has the Doctor Strange cape. I'm like, is he the Sorcerer Supreme in this universe? No, he just wears it for like 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to start with something I like, because that's what we've been doing before. I liked the twist. The idea that, or the semi-twist, the fact that it was Vision calling people to save Wanda. I like that a lot. I think it worked. It made sense with his character. It made sense with the situation. And it was kind of great.
I liked a lot about this episode, but I think the thing that stands out to me the most is you got the most character interactions that we never saw in the movies. Like you got to see Spider-Man talking to Ant-Man, talking to Wasp, talking to
Ant-Man's head.
Ant-Man, whatever. The point is, you got a lot of great character interactions that we never saw in the movies, and I really dug that. I'm like, this is a great idea.
All right. I'm going to rain on that a little bit. The fact that some of those interactions didn't work. I don't know. It felt like the episode where there was the most stupid decisions or nonsensical things happening. Like,
really? I mean, doesn't that kind of play into the zombie movie kind of tropes that they were playing off of?
Okay, but like, why did Hope stay giant when she knew she was going to become a zombie? Like, that is such a stupid thing. Or like when she just kind of like I can't remember who she explodes out of, but like, she explodes out of
somebody.
I want to see Natasha.
Maybe.
I can't remember, but like, and it's just like, and it's played for laughs, even though earlier they had just kind of established that those two had become friends in this universe. So it was kind of a weird thing to just kind of have that back and forth that to me didn't make a whole lot of sense. And yeah, I guess that's kind of like what bugged me is that some of the interventions or some of the interactions didn't seem to make that much sense to me. They weren't bad. It seemed like the episode that had the least effort put into making it coherent.
Okay, I'll agree to disagree. Episode 6 was the What If Killmonger saved Tony Stark?
See, I like that one because the title has very little to do with what actually ends up happening in the episode. Like it ends up like, yes, that is what the basis of the episode is, but what ends up changing is so much more than just redoing the first Iron Man with Killmonger instead of Rhodey, which is what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Or maybe like doing Iron Man 2 with him instead of Rhodey. But instead they were setting up a few things for later on, but like they really kind of lead into this changes everything. It's not just a one thing that changes a few things at this point in the universe. It's like, no, this is changing the course of the entire MCU.
I don't know. I didn't like that Killmonger felt like the same character. Like the fact that even though he's like living a very different reality, it still felt like he was exactly the same And that was just something I was like, I would kind
I
of like to
mean,
see you change a bit as a result of what's happening, and not just
yeah,
everyone
but at the
thinking
same
about it.
time, most of his life was still the same, right? Like, what's the difference? Like, when does because no, I never mind. I guess the Black Panther does happen after the Sokovia Accord, so it is quite a few years, but it's
Well, yeah,
still
it's like 6 years before. Like Shuri is still young in this. Like they made a point of showing that, or 8 years, excuse me, because, yeah, by the time Civil War had come out, they say it's been 8 years since he became Iron Man.
yeah, but it's still like
But anyway,
I don't know.
that's my thing. Like that's my
Yeah,
thing.
no, and I understand it, but I think that but I did enjoy, regardless, I still enjoyed that it definitely changed a lot more than just the basics of what happened, for better or for worse.
You might guess this, but the one thing I liked about this episode is when they go to design their robots and Tony Stark sees what Killmonger's come up with, and he just says, "What? I like anime." And that made me laugh because Michael B. Jordan is a real life anime fan. And I can't
Okay.
help but feel like they injected that into this for the sake of Michael B. Jordan. And people have joked that Killmonger's costume from Black Panther looks like Vegeta's outfit. So
Wow, it really does, doesn't it? I had never heard that, but yeah, it really does.
So I was like, that's a fun piece of writing, and I'm glad they've made that canon in the Marvel universe that Killmonger is an anime fan. Is there anything you didn't like about this episode?
What I didn't like is that, and I think this was like inevitable because it kind of tries to touch on things that happen in all three Iron Man movies, and all three are so different that it kind of fails on some levels, especially in like specifically the relationship with Pepper. Like, it seemed to go in a different direction completely and ignore a lot of the character growth that Tony goes through in Iron Man 2 and 3, even though technically the MCU also kind of ignored that character growth. So I can't be too hard on it, but it was a little bit off.
Episode 7 is what people call the Party Thor episode. I did not really like this one. I don't like, so like, what do I not like about it? What's my one thing? Thor, like the whole premise, like, well, what if Loki had never been adopted by Odin? And to me, it's like this Thor just feels like Thor from Thor 1. Like he doesn't feel all that different. And I don't know how he's worthy of holding the hammer. He's clearly like not very moralistic and responsible.
All right, so if we're going to go into things I didn't like it for nitpicking, in the MCU, the runes on Mjolnir are placed there during the Thor movie because
right,
Odin is trying to make sure that Thor returns as a worthy person, and if Thor was an only child, that wouldn't have happened.
But there is some kind of enchantment on it because he puts it on top of Captain Marvel and she can't get up.
Yeah, and it shouldn't. That's what I'm saying. I'm nitpicking a little bit.
Right.
I did also. I kind of disliked how little people made a deal out of aliens. Like, it was just like, oh yeah, no, Thor knows all these people. And it's like, why? Thor still lived mostly on Asgard canonically. Like, yes, in other movies he's traveled through space and he would have gone, to nowhere and to what's the other one? Sakaar. But in this universe, why would he, right? It didn't make any sense for some of the, like, I get it. It was just a cameo fest, but it made no sense for a lot of these cameos to happen. Much as I absolutely loved the image of Korg just tackling, Nick Fury. And that's why he's out of commission. I thought that was hilarious. But then also, like, Peggy, like, then they called not Peggy, yeah, they called Captain Marvel for some reason. Like, this wasn't a last resort kind of situation. Like, this was a primary invasion and not really a real invasion. It was just a party happening. Like, why did that warrant Captain Marvel coming?
I mean, one thing I thought it was really funny that Darcy and Howard the Duck got married. I thought that was hilarious.
Fair. Yeah. I will say one thing that I did like about it. Again, this is another episode where the animation shines, and it's like, yeah, no, this kind of animation was made for action. I heard people say that, they compared it to looking like a Dragon Ball Z episode. And there were aspects of that, like when they are fighting in the cloud and it's just like, sound effects. That's literally one of the things they used to do in Dragon Ball Z to kind of like, because it's cheaper for animation, but also to make it look like they're going fast, just everybody moving their eyes, and you just see like, explosions, but nobody, because they're moving too fast. And it felt very anime that way.
All right, episode 8, the penultimate episode, is what I call the Terminator episode.
Or they decided to do Age of Ultron.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this is your favorite episode.
Honestly, I think that I actually think I'll agree with you that the Hank Pym episode is my favorite, but this is definitely a close second.
So one thing I liked about this episode, I actually really liked this version, like the Sarah Connor. I know I keep making Terminator references, and they make a Terminator reference in the episode, so I know it's not just me. But I don't know, I really liked this version of Black Widow, where she ends up getting like the Red Guardian shield at the end. She just seemed very interesting, and
it's funny because I watched Black Widow after. I have watched it now, but I've watched it after watching that episode, so it didn't have quite the same significance. But yeah, no, that was good. I like the like will he won't he with the Watcher that was kind of happening. I liked
liked that they did Ultron right.
Yeah, look, I like that Ultron was Ultron, and that, like, to me was amazing. And I got super excited that he was going to be a recurring bad guy for 2 episodes, and like and again, I think I talked about this to you, but like the major critique is like, again, Thanos is kind of just a chump in this, like Ultron defeats him without even looking at him.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the one thing I don't like about this episode, is it suffers from the speed running elements of like, well, okay, we have to explain why this is different and like why Thanos isn't a threat anymore. So we'll just write it in very quickly that, oh, he's got rid of really fast.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, I really would have liked to see Ultron just beat the crap out of Thanos. Like, I think,
man, they don't have enough time.
I know.
Would you have rather they like shortened the fight he had with the Watcher to have some kind of throwdown with Thanos?
Yes.
Okay.
Even though the fight with the Watcher was probably one of the best things in that episode, I still think it would have made more sense. Or maybe just not have him fight Captain Marvel. She can die. It's really obvious that he was gonna, like, he was more powerful than her. There was no question there.
Right. And the final episode is the Guardians of the Multiverse episode.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I mean, I feel like this one suffers the most from the short runtime, because they have to try and, like, they built up the threat of Ultron so much in the 8th episode that he feels like it seems not all that difficult to defeat him in this one.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, they have the Watcher on their side, even though he technically doesn't do anything. Like, he is very, very powerful, as was, demonstrated in the earlier episode. And I don't know. And it did, like, have a payoff for trying to get a virus in him. And I guess it did kind of, it was a payoff for a lot of the characters from, the other universes, like the other episodes being brought together. And that was interesting. And I like that. Except that they just randomly, now I can't remember who it was.
Well, I liked the fact that they found a scenario to kind of gather a group of characters from the previous episodes, but I didn't like that they really didn't get much time to like interact with each other.
Right, yeah. Gamora wasn't the Gamora from any of the alternate universes.
Yeah, and apparently her story will be explored in the next season of What If.
Oh, okay. I guess, but it seems like why didn't you just do it before?
Or just not have
it seemed
her.
really strange. that she was included, but and I understand it was kind of part of the plot, but not a very big one. Like it could have been explained away pretty easily, like without the Infinity Crusher. That episode still made sense and still worked. I don't know.
So on the whole, what would you say is your least favorite episode of What If?
The zombie episode.
Really?
I
That
didn't
was
like it.
What?
Yep. I just it didn't do it for me. I don't know. I like zombie movies to make more sense, maybe, or to people to not act as stupid. I don't know what it is. I didn't like it.
All right. Well, my least favorite episode is probably Party Thor. It didn't seem it didn't seem different enough, and it was kind of, it seemed like a fluff. I was like, this is kind of pointless.
I mean, but it might have been also just like they're about to drop, real Age of Ultron level stuff where Ultron can actually just destroy everybody. Like you kind of needed something a little lighter before that,
I guess. What would you say is your favorite episode of the first season?
The one where Hank Pym kills everybody. Partially because of the treatment of Hank Pym, but also just I feel like that's the one where the quick pace did the least to undermine what was happening.
Okay. I think I relate the zombies episode the best. We get our first reference of Uncle Ben in the MCU, and I just really loved seeing all the different characters interacting. That's what I like about the MCU.
Fair enough.
Now, there has been an announcement of a second season, so are there any of these what if scenarios from the first season that you'd like to see the story continue, like in season 2?
I mean, I don't think so. Like I'm fairly certain that Killmonger's is, but which is weird because he's not there anymore, so that's going to be a strange situation. I definitely think that the one where the Avengers, again, the one that I like the most, I think also has a lot of potential, not just as like a show, but like it has potential to also work into kind of who the new Avengers are going to be in the new movies, or maybe even introduce some of them, which I think is really, really cool. And, and it also has it does have a Natasha because she came back, although Infinity Wars hasn't happened, so it's kind of hard to tell, but because it was in the middle of Avengers that she came back, right?
It wasn't clear.
Right, because Loki came to take over the place anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of a weird one.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good universe to go back to. It sounds like they're going to continue Captain Carter's story anyway, so like that, we'll see more of that universe. But I'd love to see the zombie timeline explored more, especially since Spider-Man's alive at the end.
I guess, but also I wonder if it's gonna also hold the fact that most of the zombies are gone because they were dumped into the lifeless universe by Doctor Strange.
Right. Okay, so next question. This Doctor Strange live action movie In the Multiverse of Madness is coming out next May. Are there any characters who were introduced in What If here that you would like to see make a cameo appearance in that movie?
Oh.
Obviously, we can't get the versions of T'Challa because, he's passed on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a meme, but if we can have Paul Rudd's head in a jar, that would be amazing and hilarious.
That would be a good one to have. I know a lot of people are begging for Captain Carter to make a live action appearance as giving Haley Atwell a chance to actually be the person in the suit.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I wasn't thinking about things that would actually work too well. I just
some people are suggesting this evil Doctor Strange. I mean, it'd be very easy because Benedict Cumberbatch is already in the movie.
Yeah, but also but then you need to if he does show up, then you have to acknowledge that he's not keeping an eye on that universe.
Right.
On the little pocket universe. So I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, and because Scarlett Johansson settled her lawsuit with Disney, so I guess she could make appearances now, but it'd be cool to see her Sarah Connor Terminator,
Yeah,
Black Widow make an
that could be
appearance.
interesting.
Because especially if people haven't seen What If, they'd be like, what happened to her?
Yeah, and why is she carrying a bow with her?
Yeah. Okay, so on the whole, are you happy that, like, are you happy they made What If?
Yeah, I think it was fun. It was nice. I honestly don't expect it to have that much impact on the movies of the MCU as a whole. On like personally, like because even when you were talking about the tie-ins with Loki, like other than the concept, but even like it seemed to just ignore the existence of the TVA or even its possibility. So maybe it's supposed to be after the Loki TV show but then it would be weird that Kang isn't in it and being built up the way Thanos was, even just as a mention.
Or how does the Watcher interact with the TVA? If he can observe the multiverse, wouldn't he have had something to say about these people, like kind of like prevent the multiverse from existing?
Or just ruining his cable, because that's more or less what it is.
Yeah. But on the whole, I enjoyed What If. I think every episode kind of suffers from needing to speed run through content, so the pacing feels very fast, and it does some episodes a disservice, and unfortunately it just takes away from some of the depth that the movies have been able to do, because the shows are shorter, they don't have as much time, and in certain cases you really feel that time crunch. The animation, very iffy. Some of the MCU actors who return aren't good voice actors, so their performances sound very wooden. And some of the voice acting, like replacements they get, like Josh Keaton or Lake Bell, who was this show's Black Widow, I thought did a really good job sounding like their characters. Whereas some of the other ones, I'm like, it's, I guess, passable. It's fine. You're in a minor, like the guy whoever filled in for Thunderbolt Ross. I'm like, I guess you have only a handful of lines, so it's okay, but it's not really convincing.
I was disappointed that Korg didn't speak.
Well, yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, he basically is just the voice.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm overall pleased with What If, but perhaps if you listen to this episode, you might think I don't like it because I've got lots of things to nitpick about. If the listener,
but I think it is telling that a lot of the things we were negative about were nitpicks.
That's true. Yeah.
So take it with a grain of salt.
So if the writers of What If Season 2 are listening to this, my recommendations for Season 2 are: find a way to have more Spider-Man, because I just like Spider-Man. 2, it would be fun if you could find ways to incorporate other Marvel things beyond just the movies. If you're beholden to only including the movies or the Disney Plus shows, then I understand.
But I don't like it.
And 3, I don't know, find ways to not speed run through content. I don't know.
Maybe do 2-parters.
So
like more than just for your finale.
So you're saying focus on fewer alternate stories, like focus on like maybe 3 or 4 instead of 8.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea. Do you have any suggestions for the writers?
Beware of power creep. Because, because I feel like it is a thing that it's a thing that Marvel has, like Marvel Comics seldom has had to worry about, because usually, not always, but usually when there's a cosmic entity, they're the only one, and there's the way that they get defeated is kind of either complete BS, Deus Ex Machina, or it's just, well, we don't defeat them, we just get them to leave us alone. And I feel like that's something you should be wary of, because now you've had Ultron fight with the Watcher, you've had Infinity Stones being shown to be almost nothing with Loki. You gotta have to be kind of treading carefully with that kind of concept, I think, because power creep is a real thing and it can be pretty dangerous. Do we have to explain what power creep is?
I think maybe for those who aren't familiar, maybe just briefly explain what power creeping is.
So power creeping is the idea that it happens usually because things like you want to prove that your new bad guy is pretty big, so you get him to defeat an older bad guy very easily, like kind of what happens with Thanos, that just gets eliminated by Ultron. But this establishes that there is a new level of power to beat, and if you keep doing this too often, your powers become so powerful they're meaningless, or you just have to make terrible writing choices to justify powers increasing even more.
So the first season of What If is now streaming on Disney Plus. If you have access to that service, you can watch it. I'd certainly recommend it. Nitpicks aside, it was an enjoyable show.
Yeah, definitely. Are we gonna do? Maybe we should have done bat cookie ratings for episode by episode, but we didn't think of it.
Right. Well, remember, this is the Bat credit card episode, so we'd be
all right.
Charged
So,
making Bat credit card.
What is the Bat credit? Good. Okay, so we give it a good Bat credit or a poor Bat credit.
Yes,
so it's a good Bat credit.
I'll give What If out of 4 Bat cookie credits. Are
they cookies?
I'll give What If season 1 a Bat jar or Bat credit card rating of, let's say, 3.2 out of 4.
Okay, I think I'd go as high as a 3.5. Like even the episode I disliked, it was mostly for personal reasons. And I think that objectively it was overall a very good show, and it did things that were refreshing.
So normally this is when we would look at our Bat credit card bill to read our mail, but we don't have any this week. So we will remind you how you can get a hold of us.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
And this is when we would normally pull out of our Bat credit card mail. No, that doesn't work. What? I can't think of any of the credit card related things.
Our Bat credit card rewards.
Yes. We'd use our reward points to decide what we're going to talk about next week. Our 5th anniversary will be celebrated in our next episode. Our 5th anniversary as a podcast. I have seen No Time to Die. It is 2 hours and 43 minutes long. So beef, pork, ribs, I know it's hard for you to get to the movies, and I think a movie that long is even harder for you to go and see.
Definitely.
I don't know how I forgot about this, but next Saturday is DC Fandom.
Well then. Did your first episode have anything to do with DC?
Sadly, no. We looked at the first comic book I ever bought, which was like an issue of Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh,
but
that is unfortunate. We could have gone back to something like that.
But I'm excited for DC Fandom. There's like gonna be a new trailer for The Batman. They're gonna be showing a bunch of new stuff. So let's. I know you don't like DC as much as I do, but let's.
What?
Well, I really like DC. I don't.
Okay, yeah, I that's true. You are a massive fan of DC, but I still prefer DC to Marvel.
What?
So...
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
I knew we were friends for a reason.
Exactly. There you go.
All right. So next week we're going to talk about DC Fandom. It's streaming like all day Saturday, October 16th. So if you haven't, go and watch it, folks. It's available for free online. It'll be very exciting stuff.
And I will instead be watching the League of Legends World Championships.
All right. So until then, when you will return to the normal universe where this is the Bat Jar podcast, not the Bat Credit Card podcast. Until that time, I am still above average Joe.
And I'm still beef pork cookie.
We're going. We don't need Rose.
Catch you on the flip side.